Hello and welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Louella Director of Quocirca, and today I'm joined by Epson UK and two of their key channel partners. I'll be talking to Nick Taylor from Epson UK, Richard Taylor from XBM Limited, and Gary Smith from the DTP Group. We'll be talking about the key trends, challenges and opportunities in the print market today. So welcome to the show. Nick, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your role at Epson UK and your relationship with the DTP Group and XBM?
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for the invitation, Louella. I'm Nick Taylor. I'm the UK and Ireland channel sales manager for office print products. Office print products, more commonly known as managed print services. I've been in the industry for about 17 years now, working in both the direct business and channel. I've worked for Canon and Kyocera in previous lives, and have a wide range of experience from management through to software, data capture, and a number of other areas too. And delighted to be joined today by two of our trusted partners. We have a 100% indirect channel model. We don't sell any of our products directly at all. So I'm joined by Managing Director of XBM, Richard Taylor, and Head of Divisional Managed Print Services, Gary Smith from the DTP Group. And very much looking forward to the conversation this afternoon.
Yeah, that's great. So if I can start then, Gary, if you could tell us a bit about yourself and your role.
Yeah, absolutely. I head up one of three divisions within the DTP Group. We were a business born sort of 36 plus years ago, and it was a print business back then before MPS was really a thing. And obviously our business has diversified over the years. And predominantly, we were a HP partner from a vendor perspective. We're a very loyal HP partner. And we've recently adopted Epson, which was a massive decision for us. We tend to deal in the enterprise space in relevance to management services. Everything is delivered direct from a professional services perspective. And we are sort of experts within the HE field, and we're very well known with that. And we have a full UK coverage, and we do have some scope throughout Europe as well for certain clients. We're a business based in Yorkshire. We're very proud of that. It's a privately owned business, wholly owned business, which is quite unusual in the current tech landscape. But again, it gives us one of our unique sort of elements to our DNA.
And Richard, could you tell us a bit about XBM Limited and your role there?
Thank you for the invitation. It's good to be here. My name is Richard Taylor. I'm Managing Director of XBM Limited. I joined XBM back in 2010 as a happy-go-lucky salesperson, and I've actually worked up through the ranks, becoming sales director about 5-6 years ago, and then becoming an MD 2 years ago. So this was my actual first introduction into the MPS world. XBM started its life out as actually a Xerox reseller. The XBM stood for Xerox Business Machines. We then parted ways with Xerox after about 2 years, and we dropped the Xerox Business Machines and became XBM. We partnered with Sharp and Ricoh and grew utilizing their two products. Around about 2017 is when we partnered with Epson. We became Dealer of the Year, I think, in our second year, and then gained platinum status. So around about 2 years ago or a year ago, I forget. We became platinum. There's only a handful of us in the UK, and I think there's only around about 15 of us across Europe. It's sort of the highest accolade you can have within Epson, and we're very, very proud of that. Just like Gary, we're a Yorkshire-based company, but have offices in Newcastle upon Tyne, Birmingham, and we've got satellite offices, sort of London, Manchester as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. And, it sounds, you both got sort of strong heritage in the print market. So, Gary, maybe if I could start with you, I wanted to discuss a bit about how business has changed since the pandemic and, perhaps what impact you've seen this has had on your business and your customers, particularly around changing behaviours towards print.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think I'll start with the latter, the changing behaviour towards the print. I think there's a feeling, or there's a notion right now that people are reducing and, they're really thinking about the print. I think what it is they're thinking about the shape of print, where it fits right now in their business and their long-term strategies, whether that be from a commercial perspective or from an IT stack. So I think shape is how we're feeling, the clients are now looking at it in this endemic phase. What it's meant for our business, and I have to give brutal honesty here, is as a business, we changed our business and we, plowed in efficiencies that matched what the pandemic was forcing in a business like ours, and certainly in a marketplace where, we were heavily hedged in enterprise and certainly in that HE space. How it feels right now is it feels like growing pains again of an immature business. Like I said, we are 36 years plus with a very, very healthy turnover. However, when you're going back to those growing pains because of organizations and institutions coming out of hibernation, but maybe not coming out as fast as we thought, you can't actually control the speed of how clients are wanting to look at purchases or services or strategies. So right now we're having to look internally and sort of spin on a bit of a dime to get ourselves back to fully working back to that. But you're not going back to how you were, if that means. So you're actually on a bit of a moving platform. So that's been unusual because normally you can get used to the rhythm, but the rhythm is slightly different. So that's my summary, really. It feels like a little bit of growing pains again, and we're sort of relearning how we should do this. But the good news is, we're getting there, and actually we're doing very well as a result.
We're a slightly different business to Gary's. I mean, Gary is a much bigger concern. I mean, we specialize in the SME market in schools. That's kind of where we're picking up a lot of our business. And because of that, when people were coming out of the pandemic, they had to get back into the offices as quickly as possible because they were owner-led businesses. Whereas the sort of bigger clientele, they were able to adopt this more work from home strategy. So the bigger boys sort of saw a lot of their customers still remain from home, which affected their print volumes. Whereas what we saw was that we actually saw a lot of our customers come back quicker than anybody else, which was good news for XBM because it meant that our service revenue didn't dip that massive. But fundamentally, we're not back to where we were pre-pandemic, but I think we're close to it, if that makes sense. So we haven't really seen any massive changes because our client base, the clientele is a little bit smaller than what Gary's working with, if that makes sense.
So Richard, would you say that you're optimistic then about print volumes recovering completely, or is it still too early to say whether they will bounce back completely?
Yeah, I'm fairly confident in the clientele that we work with currently in that SME marketplace. So, we can recover to pre-pandemic volumes. Absolutely. I think people still need to print. We were talking about paperless offices 15 years ago. I used to sell that solution, bearing in mind. So I know it all too well. But I don't think we'll ever get to that sort of paperless environment, certainly not in the next 5 to 10 years. But what XBM covers in market share across the UK in the print sector is probably 0.01%, let's say. So that means that there's a hell of a lot for us to grow. That 99 point whatever is still there for us to take, if that makes sense. So whilst the industry might be declining as a rule of thumb, we are growing because we're taking that market share, or certainly are trying to, as best we can.
Sorry, Louella, can I add to that? Because I think Rich gets it perfectly, like I said, because the two styles of business and marketplaces that we fish in. Ours is slightly different because what it's allowed us to do is take a more consultative approach at the shape. It's allowing us, because we do sell other technology stacks and offerings and services, it's allowing us to investigate the appropriateness of print. And I know that's an anti-vendor message. It's an anti-reseller message. We get paid when people print. We love it. However, it is giving us that line of print where print is appropriate, and print is a luxury item. And when we look at that and we look at organizations that are changing the shape, there is always something that's taking its place. A workflow, some digitization, a tablet, a laptop, whatever it might be. It allows us to look at that and actually from the ethics of print from a manufacturer's point of view, when you're dealing with an Epson or any other vendor, then that actually sinks through to what their true code should be. So that's what it's allowing us to do a little bit. And I think it's allowing us to get back to good consultancy as opposed to, shall we say, old-fashioned salesmanship.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point you mentioned around print being a luxury item and how print is really evolving. So would you say that your customers are sort of more focused on things like sustainability, reducing their environmental impact, and that consultative sale is part of delivering that business value for them through solutions as well as hardware products?
100%. I think in this, because print became with a question mark in most businesses from a cost perspective in the pandemic, I think sustainability got its just pump right to the top. People are now looking at it and they're looking at how it fits within their business. I think people that actually felt doing the right thing needed actually to be actioned as opposed to just noise. Epson do it superbly well with their heat-free technology. I think outside of that, you've got security pushing in. For me, the one that's really pushing fast is experience. People want a really nice experience, whereas before it was all cost and applications. Applications just meh. Everyone can do them. Nobody uses them. The cat's out of the bag. So for me, it's number 3, experience. Number 2, security. Number 1, sustainability.
And Richard, would you say you're seeing the same with your customers? I think the experience side of things is really interesting because we definitely see that customers are moving away from being very focused on products and hardware and speeds and feeds, and more focused, as you say, Gary, around outcomes and experiences. So Richard, is that something you're seeing with your customer base as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. This industry is full of competition, isn't it? There is photocopier resellers everywhere. There's people doing what we do everywhere. So, the customer needs that level of experience to be able to make that decision that they're going with the right person. And also they're signing in for a long period of time, aren't they? It's a 3 or a 5 year contract typically. So making that decision has to be absolutely right. And I think back with experience, again, I agree with Gary, but the sustainability side of things now does come into this when choosing, IT equipment such as photocopiers, because the sustainability message is there. Before it was a box that sat in the corner of the room that prints, and then everybody screams when it goes wrong. A little bit like electricity and gas. When that doesn't work, everybody's really annoyed. That was your photocopier. I call it quiet enjoyment. No customer ever rings us to go, hey, that photocopy is really good. They ring us to go, oh, it's broken down, or there's an error message. So now being able to talk to customers about something other than, do you want a machine that prints 10 pages a minute quicker? Being able to say, listen, if we can offset this amount of carbon, will that help with your ISO accreditations? You're spending this much on electricity. If we could reduce that by a percentage, and look, here's a beautiful 16-page report produced by Epson as to what we can do for you, without even talking about their lease costs, without even talking about their clicks. I think, this added into experience, I think it just guarantees sales.
Yeah, and maybe, Nick, if I could bring you in here, could you tell us a bit about the sustainability optimization tool, which I think Richard is referring to there? Yeah,
absolutely. So Epson, as Gary kindly said, I think we've got an incredible story to tell in the market. The heat-free micro piezo technology is unique. It's patented technology. Probably 2 or 3 years ago, we had a great message around sustainability, less energy, fewer intervention calls compared to laser devices, long life consumables, but probably struggled to make that really tangible for an end user customer to say, what's the actual monetary value to that? What's the carbon value? And what does that mean for my business? We've developed a tool around 12 months ago, whereby a customer, our partners, can essentially plug in some quite simple metrics around current solution, proposed solution, volume data, and it essentially will produce a 16-page report, as Richard said, which covers those key areas. What am I going to save in electricity costs? And that can be editable for what they're paying per kilowatt hour charge. How many consumable changes or fewer consumable changes they're going to have over that 3 or 5 year contract. And that really turns that into a monetary value. So it's quite powerful, I think, when you're proposing an Epson solution to go to a client and say, traditionally you would have a lease charge and a cost per copy service charge. Well, now all of a sudden there's a third element, which is the monetary and fiscal value to this environmental sustainability proposal that Epson can deliver, which adds a third element to the savings that a customer can make. So we've seen We've seen partners across the UK and Ireland really adapt that report and use it with both SME and corporate and education customers as well.
Yeah, and it sounds a great sales tool. Gary was talking about consultative selling, and I guess that's, a real opportunity to drive that kind of solution sale with that data. And it's all about analytics, I guess, sort of really understanding the opportunity and how customers are printing. I just wanted to move on and actually pick up on a point, Gary, you mentioned there around security, because I'm curious to understand. We do a lot around these sort of the vulnerabilities around print and the potential for data breach if printers aren't secured. Are you seeing that more customers are actually aware of the risks around printing, and is that creating a need for certain secure devices and solutions?
I'm probably going to kill the question here and kill the vibe, but no, we're not seeing that. And that's what I think there's an expectation that the industry expects that's what it is. It's almost a role play, a set play, that's what we expect. What we are seeing, though, is more governance. Certainly in the larger organisations and especially in the public sector, there's more governance for them to be able to prove and have the right certification and processes in place that can be proven. So now it's more about, does it do it, and can you prove it does it, and where is the insight in the background to say it did it? It's a covering your backside point of view. So I don't think that the true vulnerabilities of printing and security go far past the marketing. I mentioned a vendor earlier, which wasn't Epson, it was HP. They did some phenomenal marketing with Christian Slater. It was excellent. It doesn't matter what it was entertainment. And it was meant as a veneer, in my opinion. They did a really good job of trying to bring it to the forefront, but there wasn't much information behind it. It does a good job. And what I would suggest is most vendors do security fairly well. I think being able to, as a reseller, we have some responsibility to understand it beyond the vendor and to be able to articulate it and provide the white papers, the report and the insights. And being very honest, it's not people like me. You need some experts behind it or some key people who are that live and breathe that area. But in summary, I believe the clients are looking for reassurance via insights and like just that support to say that they've done it. Do they really understand it? I don't think so. I think there's much bigger security issues in an IT infrastructure within an organisation, in my opinion, albeit print should be taken seriously. I just don't think it figures, just my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I think it kind of goes back to Richard's comment about the utility aspect of print. And I think the expectation that customers have around devices, that maybe, security should be, it's kind of a non-negotiable in devices. They have an expectation that the devices should be secure. And, it's almost become a bit of a commodity as well, along with the rest of the kind of features of print devices. And I wanted to kind of move on to understand a bit more about what you're seeing in terms of customer acceptance around inkjet versus laser technology. Are you seeing, obviously Epson is, purely focused on the inkjet technology and it's got some great products, and we're seeing that more businesses are starting to consider this as, a viable alternative to laser technology. Do you see customers really sort of looking at the actual technology in that level of detail?
Yeah. I mean, I think when we started back in 2017, we were selling laser products. There's no two ways about it. We were intrigued as to what this business inkjet would bring. And I'll say it, my opinion is we fell on our face quite a few times trying to put these devices in every area, if that makes sense. And there is certain areas where you wouldn't want to put an inkjet, but we've found the sweet spot now, and the technology's come on so much because the 5690 and the 869 range, the new range is 100 times better than what they were. And now we're able to push these inkjets into pretty much every scenario. And customers are very, very happy. I think it's all about selling the perception of inkjet as opposed to actually it being any different. There's some visual differences. The way that the page comes out of the machine is the biggest visual difference I see on a 579 and an 879. And if you sell it to the customer that, listen, what we're going to do is we're going to save the world, and your photocopy is going to be part of this, but there are some differences to this. This is not a laser device. And I think if we're open and transparent with the customer, all going back to that experience point of view, then they know no different. When you get up to the enterprise range and the new AMC range, they just flow out like a normal photocopier anyway. So that kind of gets rid of it. But the products, the ink dries in 0.3 of a millisecond, I want to say. Nick might know better than that, but I'm sure it's 0.3 of a millisecond. They don't smudge, they're waterproof. There is really no difference to laser other than the way that the ink lays on the page. So we find it very easy to sell now that we know where to go to sell it, if that makes sense. And we don't have many customers query why it's ink as opposed to whether it's laser or not, but we are fully transparent with them.
Can I just add to that as well? I think it's important. I think I agree with everything Richard said there. I think it's important then that a business community gets choice. And if the choice was just laser, it'd be like going into a pub and only being able to buy alcohol. I love them. I don't love a mocktail. However, it's nice to have that choice. Yeah, no one likes a mocktail. But it's nice to have that choice, and it's nice to give clients the choice. And that choice comes back to that report that Nick was sort of talking us through earlier. If that choice is backed up with some insights, and there is difference, then that's good that there's choice, and it's nice that there is a vendor out there providing choice. Like Richard said, it might not be for everybody, but if laser was just it, I'm not sure the ethics of just laser only. So fair play to Epson of research development and plowing a ton of dollars and cash into keeping this in the marketplace for choice. And like anything, then you've got freedom of choice. Some people will choose the mocktail, some people will choose the mojito, go for it.
Yeah, I often sort of liken it to petrol versus electric cars and, kind of overcoming some of the legacy perceptions potentially around inkjet technology. And, if you think about electric, we have kind of range anxiety about that. And I think it's kind of similar in terms of what we're seeing with inkjet, that once customers see the quality and the speed of the products, then it's almost a no-brainer. But I think there's still kind of some legacy perceptions around the speed and quality. I don't know if you agree with me, Nick, and that's part of your approach with the new products.
Oh, certainly, and absolutely resonates with what Richard and Gary have said. We have one of the biggest tools that we have in our armory is bringing end user customers and partners into our showroom, because there is still this perception of inkjet was my old laser printer that sat, my old inkjet printer that sat at home that was, slow and perhaps the paper came out wet, etc. There are all these perceptions that are still around to an extent. We find when we essentially with end user customers, we get them into the showroom, we give them the full value proposition of what our offering is, which isn't just around print. Obviously, we talk about print today, but we do label printers, wide format printers, rather than just the traditional MFPs. They leave with a completely different perception of what Epson inkjet technology is as to what they started that demonstration with. So that's really powerful. And it certainly speaks to what Richard and Gary are talking around with that change in perception. And also, Gary, to what you referenced earlier around this age of consultancy sales. Again, now you are having to sell a product rather than perhaps in years before the pandemic, we were just upgrading laser devices with more laser technology, and it was a bit like for like. Now there is a real choice on the market.
Yeah, and I think, Gary, you sort of mentioned sort of at the beginning around the way your business has needed to adapt post-pandemic. And I'm just curious as to your views on, Richard as well, in terms of what the print industry needs to do to really adapt to the changes. And, obviously you've got a very strong working relationship with Epson. Is there anything in particular? Because I know, when Quocirca talks about the need for industry change, we often sort of liken it to the kind of oil tanker versus speedboat kind of approach, and that the OEMs being the oil tankers and the channel partners and the software vendors being the speedboat. But I think OEMs like Epson can operate as speedboats as well. So I'd be interested what your views are in terms of working with companies like Epson.
I'm sort of quite not outspoken, but I'm sort of passionate about this area. So first of all, the print industry needs to modernize. We need to really elevate youthful minds faster towards the top to push out some of the old hacks. Just my opinion. I love the youthful mind. I like the way they think. I like the way they think about the world and problems and solutions. So all for bringing you through to bring some sort of diversity in the age of our industry, because it sort of feels like it's dying a little bit. Within that, then, we must do more. We need to do more as vendors and as resellers. There is a laziness within this industry, I think. There's a laziness to how we sell, the perpetual upgrading from both the way manufacturers bring out products to the 3 and the 5 year life cycle. We need to stop being lazy. We need to stop selling sexy. It's print. It ain't that sexy. What we need to do is focus on making it a really, really good experience. I won't name any of these, but some of the cloud print management is still pretty clunky and doesn't do what customers need it to do. We're in an age of AI. Cloud print management should just be brilliant. So therefore, stop selling the sexy stuff and let's just nail print for what it is. And lastly, let's everybody start sharing a little bit more. It's quite an old-fashioned industry. Let's modernize and keep up with other cool modern industries.
No, I absolutely agree. I think, any traditional industry needs to almost develop more of a startup mentality and, like you say, bring younger employees into the industry, and with sort of Gen Z also coming into the workplace. It's how do you engage with those customers who become more influential in decision making. So yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It is a very sort of traditional and old-fashioned industry, and I think there's a lot of opportunity, though, still on a positive side to capture more revenue and longer-term relationships. So Richard, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with Gary in some respects. It is an old industry, and we do need to inject some life into it. And we tend to sort of invest in good people. That's what we're looking for, good people, and getting rid of the people that are on that never-ending roundabout of salespeople bouncing from job to job to job to job. I've seen them all, to be perfectly honest with you, twice, and that's more my fault. But yeah, we're getting some youth into this industry and sort of investing in people, bringing them through and getting them to sell, solutions and being more consultative and sort of creating that energy that comes naturally with youth is obviously key, and I think it will help the industry.
And so, in terms of working with Epson, I think when we were talking about this in our prep call, Gary, you mentioned, how sort of nimble and agile Epson are in terms of how you work with them. Could you maybe just elaborate a bit on that in terms of the support you get from Epson?
I think you feel from I've been indirect as well within my business life, within print, working for vendors. And the larger the vendor, the more mature they are, the less nimble you get. And it's the same with any organization, the bigger, the less nimble. Epson right now feel really nimble. They're working really hard. The personal aspect, the intimacy of dealing with a Nick or a Richard Wells. I met some of their Japanese seniors recently in London. And again, they're listening, and things that you ask for, I won't go into it. There's a technicality. Something doesn't work. We've reported it back. It's really key. It will be fixed in June. I'm not sure many other vendors would either pick up the phone, it wouldn't arrive in spam, or even fix it. And if they did fix it, it would probably be in development potentially until 2024, 2025. These guys are actioning it and have listened. That nimbleness is really key, because it's what clients and consumers, that's what we look for. We're dealing with apps and Netflix and Amazon Prime. We're looking for nimbleness. These guys have got it. I think if they can retain it, and it's very difficult for vendors to retain it because they're growing exponentially, then they'll win the day. Nimble will really win the day, along with their great message of technology. Just my opinion.
And Nick, did you want to comment on that? Is that something specifically you really focus on in terms of your support with channel partners and your channel program?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Gary. It's great to hear that. And I think the first part of ensuring that we stay nimble is being aware of the importance of that nimbleness to our partners. We're Richard Wells, our UK and Ireland head of sales, and myself are really lucky in that we've got a really diverse team. So we've got a team that have done direct sales in vendor, in partners, and also come from other industries as well. So we've used that experience, and something that we talk about quite a lot internally as a team is we want to be sort of old school, but in a good way. I.e., we will pick up the phone, we will come and sit in your sales office and talk to you about deal structures and how we can help. We will attend end user customer appointments and things like that. So we want to make sure that we are focused on the partner, the end user customer as well, and be very conscious that as we grow, and we've got some huge growth aspirations in the market over the coming years, that we retain that nimbleness and that flexibility, because that is absolutely key and it's also some of the frustrations that we hear about other vendors from our channel partners. So we absolutely want to maintain what we've got today.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear, because we do quite a bit of research around brand perception, and we're seeing that, just in terms of the perceptions around the major print brands, Epson has been sort of increasing its share over the past few years, and I think it's no coincidence that that's been through the pandemic and the real focus on sustainability. And it's great to hear that a very sort of traditional OEM has this capability to respond and adapt very quickly to sort of channel requirements and so on. So, it's been a really great conversation, and I'm conscious of time, but I know we could cover a lot more topics. But I just really wanted to end with, Richard, maybe you can take this first, is in terms of opportunities going forward for your company in terms of being a channel partner. A lot of the channel are starting to diversify their business and sort of move into IT services and other areas of the workplace. Is that something you're focusing on? And are there any key opportunities you see going forward for your company?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing for XBM and moving forward is to continue with the sustainability message. Because we're not even 40-50%, pushing that as hard as what we could do, and that's because we've got legacy customers that are either too far gone in the laser cycle or too early in the laser cycle, if that makes sense. So that's a big thing for us over the coming year to really push this sustainability more and more. We already sell other services, so we already partner with a large AV specialist. So we do a lot of AV, and we do a few projection deals with Epson. We've done a few of those. So audiovisual is a natural progression for us. And IT services is something that we will probably migrate to, but that will probably be through acquisition. And for us, we did 2 acquisitions last year, with a third just about to be announced. And we've got more targets in sight. So that probably will take our time up over the next year as to where we're going. But we already have more than one product, if that makes sense, not as in brand, but as in AV photocopiers, and we also do visitor management systems as well. So, we sort of get a customer and then sell everything into them if we can, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Gary?
Very similar to Richard's. The big play for us is we are already on quite an extensive journey in relevance to sustainability. Whilst we're using or piggybacking vendor products on the print side of things, we're also quite far down the line in our end user compute business, which is predominantly our largest sort of business by revenue. And we have a very large client base. So we are extending that portfolio. We see that as a true unique, if we can really sort of massage that out to other areas within IT. I think the other one for us is just to watch the landscape. There's a lot of noise about device as a service. Personally, at the moment, it feels like noise. I'm hoping that cloud continues to pick up its pace. So I think we will hedge around cloud and cloud applications and understanding the delivery for cloud services. And we'll keep our eye on DAS. But I think AV is another one on our landscape. But the one I think needs to go on everyone's landscape, including the channel, which doesn't seem to be mentioned at the moment, is AI. AI is happening so fast in our communities, in our consumer life. And we're hearing more and more and more, and all the big names, the Musks and the Amazons and Amazon Fresh in London, that are all using this technology. It is going to creep into business quite quickly. And I think the resellers and the vendors that can embed it in their technologies or in their services and understand it, that's the curve to get on. So I think that's the one to watch personally.
Yeah, I totally agree on the AI side. And, I think it's moving, like you say, so fast. And I think that's, even if it's not about selling AI products and services, it's about being able to adapt as quickly as the market is, because organizations will be speeding up their digitization processes and implementing AI to potentially automate repetitive tasks and so on. And there is, definitely some, synergies with print and document-based processes. So I think AI offers really sort of exciting opportunities for the channel and the print OEMs. And Nick, did you have anything to add on that in terms of, perhaps how you're developing your channel and product strategy over the coming year?
Yeah, we've got, so we've just 2 parts on that. The first is we are looking to do more revenue, increase revenue, but with a smaller number of partners. So we want deeper, more strategic relationships with the likes of XBM and the DTP group. Why is that? Well, there's not an infinite amount of resources in terms of account management, in terms of marketing budget and things like that. So we want to have longer term, more strategic partnerships. We are bringing more products out to market over the coming years, which will help us adapt and expand our portfolio. But for us, the number one objective is to continue to be at the cutting edge of the sustainability messaging in the market. We believe that we've got a unique offering and support our channel partners through our 100% channel model to address the needs of end user customers that want the most sustainable managed print offering in the market. That really is our number one objective, I think, going forward.
Yeah, that's great. And I appreciate you all joining me today, because it's been really great insight, and, particularly Gary and Richard, because, obviously you're so close to the customers. It's really useful to understand, what you're seeing in the market. And I look forward to speaking to you again and, hearing more about how things develop over the coming year. So thanks again for joining me today.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Thank you.
So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with Quocirca. For more information, please go to quocirca.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.